In today's video blog, we're going to learn about fiscal policy. Now, fiscal policy is a demand side policy whereby the government tries to influence the aggregate demand in the economy. Fiscal policy, under the expansionary fiscal policy, the government would reduce the taxes, and when I say taxes, specifically the government would reduce income tax and profit tax. The idea is to perk up the consumption expenditure and the investment expenditure. Also, the government would increase its spending. Now, government may increase its spending on, let's say, building infrastructure. Now, reducing taxes and increasing government spending would perk up the aggregate demand in the economy, which will cure recession in the economy. Now, not all is hunky-dory with expansionary fiscal policy, which means there are certain limitations. Now, the first limitation is that expansionary fiscal policy may lead to demand pull inflation. Now, this may happen because the aggregate demand may increase way too much. Secondly, expansionary fiscal policy may lead to a budget deficit. Now, this would happen because the tax revenue is shrinking because of decrease in taxes and government is spending more. So that would lead to a budget deficit. Another problem which may result from using the expansionary fiscal would be there would be a trade deficit. Now, when I say trade deficit, it means the import expenditure may be more than the export revenue. Now, imports may tend to increase. Why? Because of two reasons. Number one, there is inflation happening in the economy. So that would lead to higher imports. And secondly, imports may increase because of the tax cuts. Now, if there are tax cuts, that means people in the country are getting richer. Now, that would lead to higher imports. So, three limitations of fiscal policy we have covered till now. One is demand pull inflation, second is trade deficit, and third is budget deficit. Fourth limitation of expansionary fiscal is that it would not work or may not work if the tax cuts are saved or spent on imports. Basically, if people save the extra disposable income or they spend the money abroad, then the domestic economy would not benefit from the tax cuts. The fifth limitation of expansionary fiscal is very important for you to understand. It's called crowding out. Now, what is this crowding out? Now, you need to understand that expansionary fiscal policy will cause a budget deficit, which would require the government to borrow. Now, the budget deficit basically has to be financed, and therefore the government would have to borrow money. Now, this would mean that the borrowing requirements or the demand for borrowings in the country would increase, which would cause an upward pressure on the interest rate. Now, an upward pressure on interest rate means it would dissuade consumption spending and investment as borrowing would become expensive and savings would be encouraged. So AD, which was here in the beginning to start with, and when government used the expansionary fiscal, AD rose from AD1 to AD2, which is all good because the real GDP increased from Q1 to Q2. But because of the interest rate rising, AD would come back and it will shift leftward to AD3, which means some of the positive impact of expansionary fiscal policy would be negated. And that phenomenon is called crowding out. The sixth limitation of this expansionary fiscal policy or fiscal policy in general is time lags. Now, fiscal policy has this one problem of time lags. The first, now when I say time lag, it comprises of three lags. Number one, there would be a detection lag. Detection lag means government would take time to detect the problem. So basically, if recession started in, let's say, January, the government would come to know in May or June or maybe in August that there is recession. So that problem is called detection lag. Second lag is called formulation lag. Now, government would have to discuss in the parliament, first of all, whether to cut taxes or not and by how much. And secondly, if government spending is to be increased, then by how much, and this would take time, and that is called formulation lag. And third problem or third lag would be the implementation lag. Now, what is implementation lag? Basically, the tax changes cannot happen or cannot be implemented in the middle of the year. The government would have to wait for the new financial year to start, and then the changes can be brought about. Because of the various time lags, by the time the expansionary fiscal policy comes into effect, the problem may have got solved on its own due to other reasons, and as a result, the expansionary fiscal policy may cause hyperinflation. And last point and last limitation, basically, expansionary fiscal policy may induce short-term economic growth, but it may jeopardize the long-term growth prospects of the economy. Why would this happen? Expansionary fiscal policy would cause inflation in the economy, and when there is inflation in the economy, it causes or it creates uncertainty, which dissuades long-term investment into the economy. Therefore, expansionary fiscal policy will help in achieving short-term economic growth, but it may sabotage or jeopardize long-term economic growth. Like this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and if in future you want to see more videos from my side, please subscribe to my channel, and also please press the bell icon so that you get a notification every time I upload a video.